I thought my 33rd birthday would just be cake, some jazz, and polite smiles. But when my father asked to borrow a few dollars right amid the toasts, my phone vibrated. Unusual transaction warning. Security has been called. Everyone was still laughing, but I already saw security walking into the ballroom, the chandelier light glinting off them like an invisible alarm. My name is Tessa Lockwood. Today is my 33rd birthday. By trade, I am a digital security architect. I run the Advanced Threat Division at Vanguard Sparrow Labs. My job is to see the invisible fractures in a system, to anticipate the angle of attack before the breach ever happens. It is a skill set I honed long before I ever had a corporate title, mostly at family dinners. Tonight, however, I am just the birthday girl. The setting for this performance is the Garrison Meridian Hotel in Chicago, the Grand Ballroom, no less. The room smells overpoweringly of two things: money and lilies. Thousands of white lilies are woven into lattices against the walls. Their perfume so thick, it feels like you could drown in it. A full 18-piece swing band is playing Cole Porter, loud enough to discourage any conversation that requires genuine thought. 220 guests, the final count I'd approved, mill about, their jewelry glittering under the light of chandeliers that look like frozen explosions. My father, Gregory Lockwood, is in his element. At 68, he is a man who still believes his presence is a gift. He works the room with a practiced, predatory grace, a heavy glass of scotch in one hand, the other landing heavily on the shoulders of men he wants something from. Gregory doesn't just enter a room, he conquers it with second-hand anecdotes and the sheer, unshakable force of his reputation. He invests with his good name. He has always said, "This is convenient," as his name is the only collateral he has left. Gliding in his wake is my mother, Diane. She is a whisper of vintage Chanel and passive agreement, a woman so terrified of conflict she would compliment the warmth if the house were burning down. Her smile is a tight, polite rictus, an armor of good manners she hasn't taken off in 30 years. She sees everything, acknowledges nothing, and smooths the edges of my father's wreckage with murmured apologies. And then there is Evan, my brother, 35 years old and perpetually rugged, exuding a kind of restless energy that people mistake for ambition. He's the serial startup guy, the visionary. He's currently pitching his 7th game-changing concept in the last 5 years. None of them have ever shipped a product. None have ever had a second-round meeting. Tonight, he's wearing a midnight blue velvet blazer, his hair artfully messy, looking every bit the financial innovator he's about to be introduced as. This entire affair, this monument to excess, was my father's humble suggestion. My 33rd birthday, he'd argued, was a milestone, a simple dinner, perhaps, just the family. That simple dinner somehow metastasized into this, a ballroom that seats 300, a band that costs more per hour than my first car, a raw bar featuring a multi-tiered seafood tower that looks structurally unsound. I financed it. Financed is the clean word my father prefers. I paid for it. Every last lily, every single shrimp, every flute of champagne that wasn't the good stuff Gregory had instructed the staff to put aside for his inner circle. The deep, biting irony of the situation isn't lost on me when Gregory takes the microphone from the band leader for the official welcome. The music softens to a drum brush hum. "Welcome, ma friends," he booms, his voice radiating a host's warmth that is entirely fraudulent. He introduces me, Tessa, his wonderful daughter, who does something very clever with computers. The crowd, half listening, titters politely. Something with computers. I secure digital assets worth more than the gross domestic product of a small country. I design systems that repel nation-state level attacks. But in his narrative, I am a hobbyist tinkering in the garage. Then, his voice swells, hitting that proud patriarch cadence. "And my son, Evan Lockwood." Evan stands, raising his glass, bathing in the attention. "A true financial innovator," Gregory continues. "A man shaping the future of venture capital." The applause for this is robust, genuine. Evan accepts it with a practiced, humble dip of his chin that makes my teeth ache. He's shaping the future of my mother's credit card statements. Mostly. I'd seen it an hour ago. Evan, by the coat check, draping a laughably expensive diamond chip necklace over his girlfriend of the month. She'd gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. He'd kissed her forehead. The benevolent provider. I recognized the embossed logo on the dark blue box. I also recognized the quiet, specific beep of the transaction alert I'd set up on my mother's accounts after the last incident. He was using Mom's supplementary card, which was, by extension, my card, since I was the one who covered her household overages every single month. My father makes his rounds again, this time towing me behind him like a prize trout he'd just landed. "This is Tessa," he booms to a cluster of his golf buddies, their faces ruddy with expensive wine and entitlement. "Top of her field, absolutely brilliant," they murmur their approval, giving me cursory nods. Then Gregory leans in, dropping his voice to a conspiratorial whisper, though it's still loud enough for everyone to hear. "She built the cage, but I taught the canary to sing, eh?" He winks. They all laugh. A throaty bark. He pats my back. Hard. She does computers. But I made her. I smile. The smile is armor. It's the firewall I've been coding my entire life. I'm on my second glass of champagne, the one I promised myself I wouldn't have, trying to mentally calculate the thread count of the tablecloths, when I see it. The main banner, draped behind the bandstand, illuminated by two sharp pin spotlights. I hadn't approved a banner, in elegant looping gold script. It reads, "Celebrating Gregory Lockwood's milestone birthday and honoring future patron Evan Lockwood." I blink, reading it again. It is my birthday, my 33rd. Gregory's milestone 69th isn't for another 6 months. And future patron? Patron of what? The Garrison Meridian? A cold dread, sharp and sudden, cut straight through the champagne buzz. It's the first real crack in the facade, the first system error of the night. It's followed almost immediately by a vibration in my clutch. Not a text message. It's the hotel's private concierge network, the app I'd used to book the event. A discreet message on the house app pops up. "Ms. Lockwood, apologies for the intrusion. Could you perhaps stop by the front desk at your convenience? We just need you to reconfirm the deposit transfer limit for the ballroom extension." The ballroom extension? We hadn't extended the ballroom, and the deposit, all 6 figures of it, was paid in full, weeks ago. Transfer limit. The 2 words ping in my head like an intrusion alert. Why would they need a limit confirmed now, unless someone was trying to move money? I type a quick reply. My thumb steady. "All accounts are settled. Please check your records. I am unavailable." I hit send. I will not be dragged into a billing dispute in the middle of my own party. I will not give them the satisfaction of making a scene. It is a decision I will regret in exactly 30 minutes. I look up and watch my father across the room, accepting congratulations for his milestone birthday from a local politician. I walk to the bar to set down my empty glass. I look down. The dark, polished mahogany reflects the glittering chandeliers, and in the middle of that blinding glare, my own face is reflected back at me. I look tired. Not just party tired. I look exhausted, worn down by the familiar, grinding weight of their expectations, the constant, unspoken demand to provide the fuel for their fantasies, while I am expected to run on fumes. The reflection shows a woman who secures digital fortresses for a living but cannot keep intruders out of her own house. The band finishes a set with a loud flourish. Evan steps onto the low stage, taking the microphone from Gregory as if it's his birthright. He flashes that high-wattage, venture capital pitch smile. "Friends, family," he begins, his voice resonant and buttery. "Gregory, Dad, thank you. What a night." He gestures vaguely in my direction. "Tessa, happy birthday." The spotlight, which I am paying for, hits him. He launches into a 5-minute monologue. It's a beautiful word, salad of synergy, hyperlocal community, and disrupting the paradigm of connection. He's pitching. He's actually pitching the room, his new community-focused startup, which, as far as I can tell, is just an idea for an app that tells you where other apps are. We're not just building a company, he declares, his eyes scanning the wealthy faces. We're building a movement, and we want all of you to be part of it. He raises his glass. To the future. The room erupts in applause. People are moved. They are inspired. My father looks like he might weep with pride. I clap twice, softly, the sound absorbed by the lilies. The music swells again, a lively swing tune. The spell is broken, and the chatter resumes, now buzzing with Evan's vision. I feel a heavy hand on my shoulder, the familiar, cloying scent of my father's Scotch and cigar cologne. "Tessa, darling," Gregory whispers. His voice drops to that intimate, conspiratorial tone he always uses for family business. He leans in close, his arm draped heavily over my shoulder, pulling me into the relative shadow of a large floral arrangement. He's smiling, that broad, charming smile, but his eyes are fixed and hard. "Wonderful party, isn't it?" I just nod. "It's a lot, Dad." "Yes, yes." He squeezes my shoulder, a gesture of ownership, not affection. "Listen, honey, a little thing's come up, a fantastic opportunity. Your brother, he's really onto something huge this time." I steel myself. "Here it is, the payload." "I just need you to do me a small favor," he murmurs, his voice barely audible over the trumpet solo. "Can you lend me a few dollars? Just a little something to tide us over." "A few dollars?" The words hung in the air between us, a toxic cloud against the perfume of the lilies, in the Lockwood family lexicon. A few dollars was a linguistic Trojan horse. It was never just a few dollars. It was the verbal cover for a financial siege. "What kind of few dollars are we talking about, Dad?" I asked. My voice was quiet, even, a perfect contrast to the brassy swell of the swing band. He waved his scotch glass dismissively, a gesture meant to signal casualness, but the ice cubes barely moved. His grip was too tight. "Just a small bridge loan, an advance. Really, Evan and I have locked onto the most incredible property, the rooftop penthouse, the old Montgomery building. It's a legacy purchase. Tessa, we need to put down the holding fee, or we lose it." "How much of a holding fee?" Gregory looked away, scanning the room as if checking for eavesdroppers. Though he loved an audience. 1.9 million. I did not blink. I just nodded, as if he had asked to borrow $20 for the valet. $1.9 million. You call that a few dollars? "It's an advance," he insisted, his voice rising slightly before he caught himself. "A temporary liquidity issue. The opportunity is golden. Tessa, we have to close by Monday, or the hedge fund guys from New York will snap it up." The golden opportunity, the deadline. This was the classic Gregory Lockwood playbook. Chapter 1. Create urgency, imply scarcity. Right on cue. Evan materialized at my father's elbow. He must have seen the signal. He slid into the conversation with that frictionless, charming ease that made investors trust him and made me check my pockets. "Tessa, hey," he said, smiling, but his eyes were sharp. "It's a complete game changer. We're talking a 30% return in 18 months. Minimum. I've run the numbers." "You've run the numbers," I repeated. Evan's numbers were usually just wishful thinking formatted in an Excel spreadsheet. "Absolutely," Evan said, ignoring my tone. "And look, we'll make it official. We'll even pay you interest. A family rate. Better than you're getting from those boring bonds, right? We don't need paperwork. Trust is enough. We're family." "Trust," I said. The word tasted like ash. "You mean like the trust I showed when I paid the $60,000 for your coding boot camp in Bali that turned out to be a 6-month surfing trip?" Evan's smile tightened. "That was a networking expense. Tess, you don't understand how these things work." "Or," I continued, turning my gaze back to my father, "like the $200,000 bridge loan for your art gallery investment 3 years ago? Or the $85,000 for the boat you were going to flip, which is, as I recall, still sitting in a marina in Florida, accruing fees that I'm also paying. Gregory's face darkened. The jovial host mask slipped, revealing the raw entitlement beneath. This is not about dredging up the past, Tessa. This is about the future. This is about legacy. Family is more than money. That's a line you only use when you're asking for it, I said. Well, now, a new voice slurred, interrupting us. One of my father's golf buddies, a man named Miles who had the broken capillaries of a man who enjoyed his legacy a little too much, clapped my father on the back. Sounds like a family discussion. Gregory seized the opportunity to create a flanking maneuver. Miles, you know how it is. Kids today. They're all about contracts and digital. We come from a time when a handshake meant something. He's right, Tessa, Miles said, wagging a thick finger at me. Your father is a good man. He's always been generous. All families are like this. The kids who make it, they help out. It's the natural order of things. You should be proud you're in a position to help your father build something real. The social pressure. Chapter 2 of the playbook. Enlist allies. Frame my prudence as a character flaw, as a breach of the natural order. I felt a light touch on my other arm. My mother. Diane had drifted over, her face a mask of pained politeness. She hadn't heard the amount, but she recognized the voltage. She saw the storm gathering. Tessa, darling, she whispered, her eyes pleading. Not tonight. Please, look at all our friends. It's your birthday. Don't spoil the evening. And there it was. Chapter 3. The emotional reins. Use guilt as a harness. Remind me that my feelings, my boundaries, were secondary to the appearance of a happy, successful family. My refusal wasn't a financial decision. It was a social transgression. It was spoiling the evening. I looked at the three of them. My father, the demanding general, my brother, the smiling assassin, my mother, the silent enforcer, a perfect triangle of manipulation, honed by decades of practice. I took a sip of my champagne. The bubbles were flat. No, I said. It was so quiet. Evan actually leaned in. What? No, I repeated, louder this time, setting the glass down on a passing waiter's tray. The answer is no. There will be no more advances. There will be no bridge loans. There will not be one more dollar until the $4.2 million in previous loans are documented, and a legally binding repayment plan is signed and notarized. The silence that followed was louder than the band. Miles, sensing he had stepped into a minefield, mumbled something about the raw bar and evaporated into the crowd. My mother's hand flew to her pearls, her eyes wide with panic. Tessa, don't be dramatic. Evan's face, which had been all charm and velvet, went hard. The genial innovator vanished, replaced by the bitter, resentful man I knew. You're unbelievable. You're actually going to block the family's future over some old paperwork? We're offering you a piece of the biggest deal we've ever seen, and you're counting receipts? I'm not blocking your future, Evan, I said. I'm protecting mine. Protecting? My father scoffed. His face was flushed with anger. That's rich. You know what your problem is. Tessa, you're scared. You've got your cushy little job, your steady paycheck, and you just hide behind it. You do computers. You don't know how to take a real risk. You don't know what it takes to build something. I built the systems that protect the entire electrical grid of this state, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I built the company division that earned 9 figures in revenue last quarter. What I don't build is a fantasy fund for your unvetted, high-risk real estate gambles. It's not your money to hoard, Gregory snapped. It's exactly my money, I said. And it is not family money. It is not a communal piggy bank for you and Evan to raid whenever you have a vision. My assets are held in a managed trust. You do not have access. My father let out a short, barking laugh. It was a terrible sound. Don't give me that managed trust garbage. I've seen the portfolio. Don't you dare play poor with me. Tessa, I saw the statements just last month. You're sitting on 9 figures. 9. And you're telling me you can't spot your father 1.9 million? My blood ran cold. It was true. I was sitting on that. But he shouldn't know the number. He shouldn't know the portfolio. And then it clicked. The statements he saw, they weren't current. What portfolio did you see, Dad? Don't play dumb, he sneered. Your old files. In the study, the ones from your old brokerage, before you got all high and mighty. He meant the paper copies, the quarterly reports from last year, from before I'd moved everything, before I'd hired Avery Holt Private Wealth, a firm that specialized in high-security asset management for people exactly like me, people with families exactly like mine. The files he saw were obsolete. He was acting on old intelligence, but he had still looked. He had gone into my home office and rifled through my private financial documents. I was processing this new, grubby violation when my phone vibrated in my hand. It was a different vibration, not a text, not the hotel app. This was the push notification from the app I truly trusted, the one that used a biometric, multi-factor authentication protocol I had helped design. I looked down at the screen. A small, red-bordered banner had pushed across the top. Avery Holt. Private Wealth. Unauthorized login attempt detected. A second line of text appeared below it. Location: Garrison Meridian Hotel, Chicago, IL. My heart didn't stop. It started to beat with a cold, clear, industrial rhythm. This was not a social call. This was a breach. The request for a few dollars was the social engineering attack, the distraction. The main assault was happening right now, digitally. I looked up. My father and brother were still staring at me, their faces contorted in a mask of righteous indignation, waiting for my capitulation. "Excuse me," I said. I turned and walked away from them. I scanned the room, my eyes moving past the dancers, past the champagne tower. Evan was gone. He was no longer at my father's side. He wasn't working the crowd. I spotted him. He was all the way across the ballroom, huddled by the massive sound mixing board and the AV station. He was speaking urgently, his back to me, to a man in a black hotel uniform, the hotel event manager, the same man whose name had been on the concierge app message about the deposit transfer limit 30 minutes ago. As I watched, Evan pointed at the manager's laptop, then at his own phone, his gestures sharp and demanding. The manager typed something, his face a mask of professional concern. The two events, the probe from the hotel app and the direct assault on my Avery Holt account, slammed together in my mind. This wasn't a family loan. This was a planned, coordinated attempt at theft. The swing band launched into a screaming trumpet solo. The room was loud, bright, and full of laughter. But for me, the atmosphere had changed. The color had drained from the air. The music was just white noise, the real story. The one written in login attempts and IP addresses had just begun, and I was the only one in the room who knew how to read it. I didn't walk. I moved. I pivoted on my heel, leaving my father and his outraged entitlement hanging in the air, and glided toward the relative quiet of the arched marble hallway leading to the restrooms. My body was a perfect decoy. My steps were measured, my spine straight, my expression one of mild social fatigue, but my hand, clutching my phone, was a command center. The phone vibrated again, a secure text from Avery Holt himself. My private wealth manager wasn't just a numbers guy. He was a former cybersecurity analyst from the Department of Defense. It's why I'd hired him. The message was not a question. It was a situation report. "Tessa, we have a code red on your secondary trust. A wire request for $1.9 million was just attempted via a new portal login." I slipped into a velvet-lined alcove, shielded from the ballroom by a pillar and a massive fern. The swing music was a dull throb here. I hit the secure call button on his contact profile. He answered before the first ring finished. "Talk to me, Avery," I said. My voice was low, sterile. The panic was gone, replaced by a familiar, cold clarity. This was my job. This was a breach. "Tessa." His voice was all business, no pleasantries. The attack vector was sloppy. But the credentials they used were high grade. They didn't try to guess your password. They tried to replace you. They initiated a forgotten all credentials request, attempting to set up entirely new online access.
How?
With your social security number, an old one, looks like it was issued before the randomization, and a copy of your birth certificate. They had scans. My stomach clenched. Those were documents my father kept in his locked desk drawer, the one he kept safe for us. They had the keys to the kingdom. Almost, Avery said. The new login was flagged by the system because it originated from an unsecured public IP. The wire request was initiated less than 30 seconds later. The destination account was a new shell corporation, opened 2 days ago in Delaware. Lockwood Legacy Holdings. My God, I whispered, not in shock, in disgust. They had been planning this for weeks. The party was the staging ground. The loan request was just the polite cover story. The system auto-locked the transfer, pending verification, Avery said. I need you to verify. Standard protocol. 3 questions. Are you ready? Proceed. Question 1. What was the name of your first-grade teacher in Scarsdale? Mrs. Gable. Question 2. What is the kill switch phrase for Project Chimera? Execute Protocol 99. Burn the drives. Question 3. What was the amount of the first check you ever wrote to your father? My breath hitched. A brutal, perfect question. $22,500 for his mismanaged tax bill. Voice print and data verified, Avery said instantly. All accounts are now in full lockdown, a hard freeze. Nothing moves in or out, not even by you. Without a verbal countersign from me, the internal wire portal is now flagged red at a system-wide level. We're safe. Good. Now, the offensive. The IP address. You traced it? Garrison Meridian Hotel. Unsecured guest network. The specific port they used was for the ballroom's dedicated AV and event service. Evan, I said. The image of him at the AV desk flashed in my mind. He's with the event manager. I've already contacted the hotel's corporate compliance division, not the front desk, Avery said, anticipating me. They are routing their internal security chief to the ballroom now. I advised them they have a guest actively attempting to commit wire fraud using their network. I suggested they lock down the entire ballroom's network infrastructure, but they're hesitant without a formal request from the event host. I'm the one paying, but my father is the host, I said, the irony thick enough to choke on. They're protecting him while his son tries to rob me. Tessa, what are your instructions? This was the moment, the pivot point. I could shut it down, go back to the party, and have a quiet, civilized war tomorrow. Or I could burn the whole rotten structure to the ground. I chose the fire. Avery, I said, my voice dropping, I want you to call Naomi Sutter, my lawyer. I want her woken up, and I want her here. I don't care what it costs. Get a car. Tell her to bring the full file. The family file? He asked. He knew. The whole thing. Every scanned IOU. Every loan document I made my father sign. Every record of the $4.2 million I've gifted or loaned them over the last 10 years. I want the entire history of my financial relationship with Gregory and Evan Lockwood on her tablet when she walks in that door. Done, he said. Next, the data. I don't just want the IP. I want a full log from the hotel network. I want every MAC address that accessed their system from within that ballroom in the last 3 hours. I want to fingerprint the specific devices they used. I want a complete packet capture if their routers can provide it. I am initiating a formal request for evidence preservation. Tell hotel security that. They will fight it. Then Naomi can get a court order, but you and I both know the hotel's compliance team will roll over to avoid a lawsuit. Tell them I am Tessa Lockwood of Vanguard Sparrow Labs, and I am treating this as a high-level corporate espionage attempt originating from their unsecured network. That will get their attention. Understood. I'm on it. One more thing. Avery, activate the full-spectrum monitoring on my family. Credit, accounts, everything. I want to know if they so much as apply for a new credit card. Tessa, he said, his voice softening for a fraction of a second. This is a big step. They tried to steal $1.9 million from me. Avery, at my own birthday party? The time for big steps is over. This is war. I hung up. My hand was shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline, a white-hot, cleansing rage. I looked at my hand. The skin was pale, the knuckles tight. I needed a prop. I turned and walked back toward the ballroom, stopping at a small satellite bar in the hallway. I picked up a clean, empty champagne flute. I just held it. It was cool, smooth, a piece of civilized glass to anchor me. I walked past the entrance to the ballroom, not going in, but continuing down the wide, carpeted corridor that ran parallel to it. I needed to see them from a different angle. There was a service entrance, the doors propped open for the catering staff. I stood in the shadow of the doorway, looking in. The band was playing something upbeat. The crowd was laughing. And there, across the room, was Evan. He was exactly where I'd seen him, at the AV station. But he wasn't with the hotel manager anymore. He was with a young technician in a black polo shirt, the kind of tech who just follows orders. The tech was holding a silver laptop, and Evan was leaning over it, pointing at the screen. Even from this distance, I could see the interface. It wasn't a complex soundboard. It was a simple, web-based guest portal, the kind used to manage Wi-Fi access, or, in this case, to link devices to the room's host account. Evan was talking, gesturing, that charming, persuasive smile plastered on his face. The tech was nodding, typing. Evan was social engineering a minimum wage employee to gain privileged access to the network. My blood turned to ice. I raised my phone. I braced my arm against the doorframe. The ballroom was dim, lit by the chandeliers and spotlights. I zoomed in. My phone's camera is state-of-the-art. I adjusted the light sensor, tapped the screen to focus on the laptop and Evan's face. I disabled the flash. I took the picture, a clear, high-resolution shot. Evan, the tech, the laptop, the guest portal on the screen. The timestamp would be embedded in the metadata. Evidence, the moment I sealed the case. I lowered the phone and was about to move when it vibrated again. Another text from Avery. Second attempt just blocked. Different vector. They didn't try the portal. They used a device already authenticated on the host network, an iPad. The device is registered to the name GL Host. My breath caught. G.L. Gregory Lockwood, my father. He wasn't just the distraction. He wasn't just the face of the shakedown. He was the one who provided the digital credentials. He had used his host status, the one I had paid for, to get a pre-authenticated device from the hotel staff, and he had handed it to his son to use as a weapon against me. The milestone birthday banner, the future patron Evan title, it all made a sickening, perfect kind of sense. It was a coronation, funded by my theft. My phone vibrated one last time. Avery. Hotel security chief and 2 officers are en route. ETA 6 minutes. They are approaching from the main lobby. I advise you to remain in a public, well-lit area. Stay visible. Tessa, do not let them corner you. 6 minutes. The countdown had begun. I pushed off the doorframe. I didn't go back to the alcove. I didn't hide. I walked straight back into the ballroom. The light hit me like a spotlight. The music, a frantic swing number, seemed to swell. 220 guests, laughing, drinking, dancing, my family. My mother was sitting at the head table, smiling her tight, polite smile at one of Gregory's friends. My father was standing near the stage, holding his scotch, basking in the glory of his party. I didn't go to him. I didn't go to my mother. I walked to a spot in the center of the room, near the edge of the dance floor. I stood alone, my back to the wall of lilies, the empty champagne flute in my hand. I was visible from every entrance. I could see the main doors. I could see the service hall. I could see my father. I could see the AV station where Evan was still huddled over the laptop, unaware that the digital alarms were screaming. I just stood there, and I waited. After a moment, my father saw me. He had been looking for me, his brow furrowed, annoyed that I had walked away from his generous offer. Now, seeing me standing alone, his expression cleared. He thought I had pouted and was now ready to be reasonable. He raised his glass, that big, magnanimous smile returning to his face. He waved me over, a small, patronizing, come here gesture, as if beckoning a difficult child. Come on, Tessa, it's all just a small matter, a few dollars. I didn't move. I just met his gaze from across the room. I held it. I let him see the person he thought he knew, standing there, perfectly still. I watched my father, smiling his con man's smile, as the clock on my phone ticked down. 5 minutes. The music was still loud, but my father's fixed smile cut through the noise. He crossed the dance floor with a predatory smoothness, his path never wavering. He didn't like me standing alone. It was outside of his control. It was a variable he hadn't accounted for. There you are, he said, his voice a low, booming purr designed to sound warm and concerned. He placed his hand on my elbow. His grip was proprietary. Standing all by yourself on your big night. Come on. He didn't wait for my answer. He steered me, firmly, away from the open center of the room and toward the far corner. The hotel had set up a lavish photo booth, complete with a backdrop of shimmering gold sequins, a box of ridiculous props, feather boas, oversized glasses, and its own little velvet rope line. No one was using it. Let's get away from the noise, he said. A little privacy, so we can talk warmly. Warmly, the word was a threat. We stepped behind the sequin backdrop, into a small alcove formed by the wall and a row of staging equipment. The light was dimmer here, the music slightly muffled. It smelled of dust and synthetic fabric, a perfect place for an ambush. As if summoned by an invisible signal, the rest of the triangle closed in. My mother, Diane, drifted over, her face a painting of anxious concern. She didn't stand beside my father. She stood at the edge of the alcove, blocking the narrow path back to the ballroom, a soft, smiling sentinel. Evan appeared a second later, coming from the direction of the AV station. He didn't join my father, but flanked me on the other side. He leaned against a stack of audio cases, crossing his arms. He was casual, but his position was strategic. They had me, a 3-point enclosure, father in front, brother to the right, mother blocking the exit, a familiar, intimate prison. My father's entire demeanor shifted. The angry, entitled man from the hallway was gone. This was Gregory the patriarch, the reasonable, loving father who was merely disappointed. He softened his voice, the one he used when he was about to deliver the killing blow. Tessa, honey, he began, you're misunderstanding. This isn't a loan in the way you're thinking. This is a family investment. We are on the 1-yard line. The only thing we need, the only thing, is a short-term authorization. He was using specific words. Short-term authorization. Not money, not loan. It was sterile, technical. It was language designed to be signed. Evan, show her, my father commanded. Evan, on cue, pushed off the wall. He held up his phone, the screen blindingly bright in the dim alcove. It was open to a forum, a high-end, members-only real estate blog. He scrolled through a series of comments. See, Tess, he said, his voice earnest, the eager younger brother. The Montgomery penthouse. It's the hottest off-market deal in Chicago. This guy. Alpha Realty. He says it's going to double in value once the new zoning passes. This other one. Chi-Town Venture. Says he heard a New York fund is making an all-cash offer on Monday. We are this close. He was using the phone like a talisman, a piece of modern magic. He believed the glowing screen and the anonymous comments were a form of undeniable proof. A magic charm, as he'd say. He thought this deal-hot performance was his closing argument. I didn't even look at his screen. I looked past Evan, into the sliver of the ballroom I could still see. The event manager, the one Evan had been speaking to, was walking by, his eyes averted. I kept my voice perfectly flat. Who just tried to log into my secondary trust account at Avery Holt? The shift in the alcove was instantaneous. It was not a sound. It was a pressure change. Evan's hand, the one holding the phone, jerked. A tiny, fractional movement. My mother's breath hitched. She took a half step back, as if I had cursed. My father. My father laughed. It was a dry scoff, a puff of contempt. What are you talking about? My God, Tessa, you are so paranoid. Is that what this is? You think because I ask for a family loan, someone is hacking you? You've been staring at those computers for too long. You're seeing ghosts. I'm not seeing ghosts. Dad, I'm seeing data. I raised my voice, just enough to carry. Mr. Henderson. The event manager froze. He had been trying to slip past. He turned, his face a mask of professional neutrality that was failing. Badly. Yes, Ms. Lockwood? A quick question for you. Hotel security. I didn't move toward him. I made him come to me. He stepped, reluctantly, toward our tense family tableau. My father's eyes narrowed, furious at my escalation. Mr. Henderson, does the hotel provide guests with pre-authenticated iPads for ballroom events? Henderson's eyes darted to my father, then to Evan, then back to me. He was sweating. We have VIP services. Yes, an iPad can be linked to the host account for presentations, or sometimes for guests to upload photos to the screens. I see. An iPad, say with the device name GL Host? The manager's professional mask cracked wide open. He physically paled. That would be a specific administrative device. Yes. Good. I held up my phone. I didn't show him the Avery Holt alert. I showed him the photograph I had taken from the service corridor, the photo of Evan, the technician, and the laptop. Then can you explain why that GL Host iPad was being used by my brother, over at your AV station, to access a network portal just 10 minutes ago? Right at the same time, a $1.9 million fraudulent wire transfer was attempted from my account, using this hotel's IP address? Henderson looked like he was going to be sick. He opened his mouth, but only a small squeak came out. Mr. Lockwood requested. Mr. Evan Lockwood, he stammered, pointing a shaky finger at my brother. He requested the device. He said he needed to manage the guest photo slideshow. As a representative of the host, I had no idea. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. You've been very helpful. I dismissed him. He practically ran, disappearing into the crowd. The silence in the alcove was absolute. The band might as well have been on the moon. Evan was staring at me, his face white, his mouth a thin line. He had been caught, utterly. My father looked apoplectic. He was vibrating with rage, not at his son's crime, but at my public exposure of it. My mother was the first to move. She surged forward, grabbing my arm. Her nails dug into my skin. Her voice was a frantic, desperate hiss, meant only for me. Tessa, stop this. You stop this right now. You are making a terrible scene. Think of your brother. You will ruin him. It's a misunderstanding. It's just Evan being... Evan, don't do this to him. Don't be cruel. Toy Evan. You'll hurt him. She was pleading for the predator, not the prey. I looked down at her hand on my arm. Then I looked into her eyes. No one is being hurt, Mom, I said, my voice cutting and clear. This isn't about feelings. This is not a misunderstanding. There are no poor people here. There is only a right action and a wrong action. There is only the truth and a lie. This is family business, my father finally exploded, his voice a low roar. He stepped toward me, jabbing his finger in my face. You do not air this out. You do not embarrass your brother, or me, in front of staff. This is a family matter, and we will resolve it internally. Internally? I asked. Like all the other loans? Like the $4.9 million you've already resolved by forgetting it exists? This isn't family business, Dad. This is wire fraud. It was a stranger, Evan suddenly burst out, finding his voice. It was shaky, high-pitched. It must have been someone in the crowd, a guest. You heard the manager. Dad, He said the iPad was for guests. He said it was requested by you. Evan, I said. He's mistaken. It was a stranger, my father said, latching on to the lie. This hotel's security is laughably lax. I'll have their jobs for this. Someone clearly spoofed the network. You, of all people, should know how that works. Tessa, it was an outside party. They were closing ranks. The narrative was being rewritten. Live. It was now the hotel's fault. It was a mysterious, nameless hacker. Evan, emboldened by my father's defense, nodded eagerly. Exactly. An outsider. We should be locking down the party, not accusing each other. This is what happens when you use public networks. Tess, he was trying to lecture me on network security. He was so busy performing his innocence, so caught up in the lie, that he didn't realize what he was doing. As he spoke, his free hand, the one not holding his phone, went unconsciously to the breast pocket of his velvet blazer. He tapped it. A light, nervous, 2-beat tap, tap, a gesture of reassurance. I watched the movement. I saw the faint, rectangular outline inside the pocket. It was the precise shape of a hotel keycard, the keycard that would grant him access to the host suite, the keycard that the GL host iPad was likely paired with. It was his tell, the physical proof, sitting in his pocket, that he was lying. My father was still ranting. You're so desperate to believe the worst of us, to think we're all just, that you're so superior. His words were just static. I was no longer listening to him. My phone vibrated in my hand. I looked down. A new text from Avery. It was short. All new device authentications are blocked. Full lockdown is holding. Security is in the lobby. They are on their way to you. I looked up from the screen. My family was still staring at me, their faces a mixture of fear, rage, and righteous indignation. They were waiting for me to break, to apologize, to accept their lie and save the party. I held my phone. I tapped the screen, opening a reply to Avery. My thumb was perfectly steady. Initiate formal verification. I will require their presence in the ballroom. Bring them to me. I hit send. I didn't have to wait long. My phone read 8:55 p.m. The 6 minutes had elapsed. Through the main archway of the ballroom, they appeared. They were not police, not yet. They were something more surgically precise, more corporate. 2 men and 1 woman, all dressed in dark, impeccably tailored suits that were a shade too heavy for a party. They were the kind of suits that are meant to conceal equipment. They moved with a quiet, frictionless authority, their eyes scanning the room. Not the guests. They were led by Mr. Henderson, the event manager, who looked pale and brittle, as if he were walking to his own execution. They did not fan out. They moved as a unit, their path cutting directly through the thinning crowd on the dance floor, straight toward the photo booth alcove. My father, who had been glaring at me, furious at my silence, saw them. His entire posture changed. He was the host, the patriarch, and his domain was being invaded. He stepped forward, out of the alcove, his chest puffing out. "What is the meaning of this?" he boomed, his voice radiating an authority he did not possess. "I am Gregory Lockwood, the host of this event. Who are you? You are disrupting my daughter's birthday." The lead man, the one with graying temples and the rigid posture of an ex-military officer, did not look at my father. His eyes found me, still standing by the backdrop. "Are you Ms. Tessa Lockwood, the card holder for this event?" His voice was flat, professional, and loud enough to cut through the din. I nodded. "I am." Only then did he turn his gaze to my father. "And you are Mr. Gregory Lockwood, the registered host?" My father, thrown off by the man's refusal to be intimidated, just nodded curtly. "I am. Now what is this?" The man cut him off, consulting a small, leather-bound notebook. "My name is Arthur Shaw, head of corporate security for the Garrison Meridian, North America. We are here on behalf of Hotel Corporate Compliance. We have received a formal Priority 1 notification from Avery Holt Private Wealth, representing our guest, Ms. Lockwood, He paused, his eyes sweeping across my father, my mother, and Evan. "We have a confirmed report of suspected unauthorized access to a guest's financial account, originating from this ballroom's dedicated network." The silence that followed was a physical thing. It was a vacuum. The swing band, which had been vamping through a soft ballad, sensed the shift. The trumpet player held a note that just died. The drummer's brushes stopped. 200 pairs of eyes turned toward us. Evan lunged forward, his panic manifesting as outrage. "This is unbelievable! This is a private party! You can't just barge in here and make accusations. You have no right. These are our guests." "Actually, Mr. Lockwood?" Henderson, the manager, squeaked, suddenly finding a scrap of spine now that he was flanked by his security team. He was holding a tablet, and he angled the screen toward Evan as if it were a shield. "As per the event contract, which you, Mr. Gregory Lockwood, signed, Clause 7, Subsection B, all hotel-provided network equipment, including guest Wi-Fi, hardlines, and host-provisioned devices, remain the property of the Garrison Meridian and are subject to monitoring and control in the event of any suspected illegal or fraudulent activity. The bank's formal request, alleging wire fraud, automatically triggers that clause." Evan looked as if he'd been slapped. I stepped forward, out of the alcove, into the full warm light of the ballroom. I felt the heat of the spotlights. I was now on center stage. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson. I appreciate your promptness." I turned to Mr. Shaw. "To that end, I require 2 things immediately. First, I want a full, immutable copy of all network logs, including all packet data and a list of all MAC addresses that have connected to the ballroom's access points in the last 6 hours. Second, I want this ballroom's Wi-Fi zone shut down, immediately. Create a new, secured access point for your staff only. The guest network is now a compromised crime scene." "Mr. Shaw nodded, a flicker of professional respect in his eyes. He'd been expecting a hysterical victim, not an incident commander. "Understood, Ms. Lockwood." He gestured to his female colleague, who was already typing into a ruggedized handheld device. "We are already partitioning the network." He then turned to Evan. "Sir, Mr. Henderson's report states you were issued a host-level device by our AV team, an iPad, registered to the network as GL host. We require that device." Evan's face went chalk white. He did the unconscious tap-tap on his blazer pocket again, a nervous spasm. I don't know. I don't have it. I must have set it down somewhere. It's lost." "Lost," Mr. Shaw repeated, his voice flat, noting the lie. "Yes," my father boomed, recovering. He saw the new narrative. "He said he lost it. It was probably stolen by the same person who tried to access your account. Tessa, this hotel's staff is clearly incompetent and their network is a sieve. I hold you responsible, Mr. Shaw." "We were just looking for it," Evan said, his voice shaky as he grasped the lifeline his father had thrown him. "It's a big room. It could be anywhere." "No need to look," a new voice said. It was a young waiter, balancing a heavy silver tray stacked high with empty glasses. He was trying to get behind the photo booth backdrop to clear the area, which we were still blocking. "Excuse me, Mr. Lockwood," he said, nodding at Evan. He pushed the heavy sequined curtain aside to make room for his tray, and there it was. Sitting on a small stack of folded, cream-colored tablecloths, tucked perfectly out of sight, was the silver iPad. The waiter, oblivious to the detonation he had just triggered, simply pointed at it. "Oh, good. You found it. That's the one you asked me to hold for you about 10 minutes ago. Right, sir? You said you needed both hands to find your father and didn't want to lose it." Evan did not move. He did not breathe. He was a statue carved from ice. The entire room saw the waiter, realizing from our faces that he had just done something monumental. Froze. Mr. Shaw stepped forward, past my father. He pulled on a pair of thin black latex gloves from his pocket. He picked up the iPad, not by the body, but by the very edges. He did not turn it on. He slipped it into a large, clear plastic evidence bag that his colleague was holding open. "We have the GL host device," he said. Not to us, but into a small microphone on his lapel. "Thank you," I said to the waiter. The young man looked utterly terrified, realizing he had just testified, and he fled, tray and all, toward the kitchens. I turned back to Mr. Shaw. "For your report, the associated bank case number is AH901-44. The attempts were logged at 8:05 p.m., 8:22 p.m., and the final device-specific attempt was at 8:41 p.m. My wealth manager, Mr. Holt, has the full packet captures ready for your IT department whenever you need to escalate." The precision of it, the data, the case number, the timestamps, it seemed to suck the air out of my father. His rage had no target. He couldn't bully a case number. He couldn't intimidate a timeline. He was a general with no army, on a field he did not understand. So he imploded. He turned to me, and in the space of a single breath, the raging patriarch vanished, replaced by a broken, wounded old man. His shoulders slumped, his face crumpled, his voice cracked. It was, I had to admit, the most brilliant performance of his life. "Tessa?" he whispered, his voice trembling with a sudden, tragic vulnerability. What is this? Lawyers? Bank cases?" He put a hand to his chest, as if I had physically stabbed him. You suspect me? Your own father?" He looked around at the silent, watching guests. "After all I've done, all we've built, you would believe a machine, a hotel guard, over your own blood? You would do this, to me, at your own birthday party? Right on cue." The second barrage began. My mother, Diane, didn't just tear up. She produced a single, perfect, theatrical sob. It was a sound engineered for maximum guilt. She covered her mouth with a trembling hand, her pearls shaking against her skin. "Oh, Gregory, she can't mean it," she cried, though her tears were strangely dry. "Tessa, no. Please, no. This is our family. You're destroying us. It's a mistake. It's all a terrible mistake." It was a masterpiece of emotional pincer warfare. The wounded father, the weeping mother, in their narrative, I was no longer the victim of a felony. I was the perpetrator of a family tragedy. I was the cold, cruel, heartless daughter, the ungrateful cash cow who had finally and irrevocably turned. I looked at my father's trembling lip. I looked at my mother's performance of grief, the smokescreen, the tactical fog of war, designed to blind me, to make me doubt the data, to make me apologize for their crime and beg them for forgiveness. It had worked on me for 33 years. It did not work tonight. "This is not about suspicion, Dad," I said, my voice cutting through his performance. It was not loud, but it was sharp, and it carried across the silent room. "This is about evidence. It is not about who I believe. It is about what happened. And what happened? The attempt to wire $1.9 million from my account without my authorization is a felony." I looked at my mother. "And this," I said, gesturing to their combined emotional display, "is over. I will be retaining my lawyer, who is on her way here now. From this moment on, everything will be based on paper, on facts, on the truth, not on family feelings or golden opportunities or what other people will think." Mr. Shaw nodded, satisfied. The family drama was not his concern. The crime was. "Ms. Lockwood, we will escort this device to our secure office. Our team has confirmed the ballroom network is now partitioned. We will wait by the entrance for your legal representative." The stage was set. The great chandeliers of the Garrison Meridian still poured their warm, golden light down on us, but the atmosphere was frigid. All the oxygen sucked out. The swing band, realizing the party was well and truly over, had packed up their sheet music. The saxophone player was already swabbing his reed. The only sound was the distant, nervous clatter of plates from the kitchen and the low shocked. Venomous whispering of 200 guests. My birthday party had become a theater. The guests were no longer participants. They were the audience, watching the final, terrible act of a play they hadn't known they were attending. My father stood frozen, his wounded mask still on, but his eyes were reptilian, cold, and full of hate. My mother wept silently, her smokescreen having failed, her face ugly with real, desperate panic. And Evan had not moved since the waiter pointed out the iPad. He was a ghost in a velvet jacket. He took one slow, shuffling step backward, then another. His eyes were no longer on me, or on my father, or on the security team. His eyes were darting, frantically, toward the glowing red exit sign on the far side of the ballroom. Naomi Sutter did not arrive. She materialized. The crowd of guests had begun to coagulate near the exits, whispering in shocked, excited clusters. They were a captive audience, unsure if they should leave or stay for the finale. My father, mother, and brother were a frozen tableau of ruin near the stage. Mr. Shaw and his security team stood like statues by the main doors, their presence a silent, suffocating pressure. Into this vacuum, Naomi walked. She was not tall, but she occupied an incredible amount of space. She wore a severe dark gray suit, her hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful. She carried 2 hard-sided, aluminum briefcases, not leather, aluminum, the kind you see handcuffed to spies in movies. She was followed by a younger, paler associate who was rolling a third, larger case. She did not look at me. She did not look at my family. She scanned the room, identified the largest, most centrally located, and now completely empty guest table, the one meant for my father's inner circle, and walked directly to it. She set her briefcases down with 2 sharp, metallic thuds that echoed in the silent room. She snapped open the first case. It was not full of papers. It was full of technology. A high-security laptop, a portable printer scanner, and a satellite hotspot. She turned to Mr. Shaw at the door. "Mr. Shaw, I am Naomi Sutter, counsel for Ms. Lockwood. My associate, Mr. Klein, will coordinate with you on evidence preservation and a chain of custody for all digital and physical items, starting with the GL Host iPad. Thank you for your prompt response." She had taken command of the room in less than 10 seconds. Only then did she walk over to me. She placed a hand briefly on my arm. Her skin was cool. "Are you harmed, Tessa?" she asked, her voice low. "No," I said. "I'm functional." "Good." She nodded, satisfied. "Avery Holt's data packet was thorough. We have what we need. Let's proceed." She walked back to the table. This was not a negotiation. It was an audit. She snapped open the second aluminum case. This one was full of paper, files, dozens of them, organized by color-coded tabs. She pulled out the first one. It was a single, bound document, thick as a phone book. She placed it in the center of the table, facing my father. "Mr. Lockwood," she said, and her voice was suddenly, shockingly, public. It was a courtroom voice, designed to carry. "Please, join me." My father, looking dazed, as if he'd been woken from a long sleep, moved woodenly toward the table. My mother and Evan followed like 2 small, wretched boats in his wake. They sat. The audience of guests leaned in. "This," Naomi said, tapping the thick document, "is a summary ledger. It details 10 years of assistance, support, and loans provided by my client, Ms. Lockwood, to you, Gregory Lockwood, and to your son, Evan Lockwood." She opened it to the last page. "The total, as of tonight, accounting for baseline interest, which you both agreed to, is $4,217,654.22. She let the number hang in the air. "Every single item in this ledger is delinquent. No payment, principal, or interest has ever been made on any of the documented loans." She pulled out another file. These are the loan agreements, the major ones, the $200,000 for the art investment, the $85,000 for the boat, the $150,000 to restructure Evan's first startup. She fanned them out. All signed by you, Gregory, and you, Evan. You'll note the penalty clauses, which you both initialed, stipulating that in the event of default, which you have all been in for several years, Ms. Lockwood has the right to secure assets. We also have the email chains for each, confirming your receipt of funds and your agreement to the terms. Evan just stared, his mouth hanging open. My father was looking at his own signature as if it were a forgery. Naomi continued, her rhythm brisk, surgical. She pulled out a thin stack of papers with a different colored cover sheet. These are the credit card statements for the supplementary card Ms. Lockwood provides to her mother, Diane. My mother, who had been weeping silently, flinched as if struck. These statements are for the last 12 months only. They show, among other things, the purchase of a $75,000 Patek Philippe watch, which Mr. Evan Lockwood, she nodded at my brother, gave to his then-girlfriend last spring. They show the lease payments on an Audi R8, also registered to Mr. Evan Lockwood. They show multiple five-figure cash advances, all drawn by Mrs. Lockwood, and all coinciding with Mr. Gregory Lockwood's quarterly investment club dues. My mother let out a small, strangled gasp. And finally, Naomi said, we have the file for tonight's event. She produced the master invoice from the Garrison Meridian, a deposit of $100,000, paid from Ms. Lockwood's account, and here, she pointed to a line item. We have the note from the event planning manager, dated 6 weeks ago. It confirms that the Legacy Patron package, which included the upgraded ballroom, the seafood tower, and the 18-piece swing band, was requested specifically by Mr. Gregory Lockwood, who assured the hotel it was a surprise for his daughter. My father had not just allowed me to pay, he had actively, secretly upgraded the party at my expense, all while planning to use it as a stage to rob me. Now let's get to the present, Naomi said, her tone becoming even colder. My client was informed by Mr. Holt that you, Mr. Lockwood, were operating on old financial data you confirmed, verbally, to my client that you took from her home office without her permission. She pulled out another file. These are email records, from last year, from you, Gregory, to my client. You ask, on 3 separate occasions, for temporary password access to her brokerage accounts, so you could help her with her taxes. You said it was too complicated for her to handle alone. My father sank lower in his chair. Ms. Lockwood, wisely, never provided that access. Instead, as a direct result of those requests, she transferred her entire portfolio to the high-security management of Avery Holt Private Wealth 1 year ago, placing it far beyond your reach. The documents you stole were obsolete. Which brings us to tonight. Naomi slid a single sheet of paper into the center of the table. This is what you and Mr. Evan Lockwood were trying to get my client to sign tonight, in the alcove. Just before security arrived, you called it a short-term authorization, a formality to hold the spot on your penthouse deal. She tapped the paper. This is not an authorization. This is a limited power of attorney, drafted by your own lawyer, granting you, Gregory Lockwood, discretionary control over Ms. Lockwood's primary trust accounts for a period of 72 hours, specifically for the purpose of executing time-sensitive real estate transactions. You were not asking for a loan. You were trying to get her to sign the keys to her entire kingdom, right after your son had failed to pick the lock digitally. This was the moment, the final, clicking piece of the mechanism. The golden opportunity wasn't just a lie to get a loan, it was the pretext for a complete takeover. And as for that attempt, Naomi said, looking up as Mr. Shaw walked back to the table from the doorway. Mr. Shaw? Mr. Shaw did not look at my family. He looked at Naomi. Ma'am, my team has confirmed the MAC address of the GL Host iPad. It is a perfect match for the device that initiated the final deprivileged access attempt on Ms. Lockwood's account at 8:41 p.m. The device was logged into the router in this ballroom at that exact time. There was no outside breach. The call is coming from inside the house. The technical confirmation, the final nail. Evan made a small, choking sound. He finally broke. "No," he stammered, his voice cracking. "No, you don't understand. I was just trying to check the party balance. I thought she'd overpaid, and I wanted to see if there was extra in the account. To pay for the penthouse deposit. I was trying to help." It was the most pathetic, desperate, and transparent lie I had ever heard. A child's lie. Naomi just stared at him, her expression one of profound professional disappointment. "You were checking the balance for a $1.9 million wire transfer to a shell corporation you opened 2 days ago? Mr. Lockwood, please." Evan put his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Naomi turned to Mr. Shaw. "Mr. Shaw, my client formally requests the hotel secure that device, as well as all associated network logs, as primary evidence in a forthcoming civil, and likely criminal, investigation. We will have a court order for preservation delivered to your corporate counsel within the hour." "Understood, ma'am. We will maintain chain of custody." Mr. Shaw nodded and retreated to the door. The room was so quiet. I could hear the whir of the ice machine from the bar at the far end of the hall. I looked past my family's wreckage. I saw Miles, my father's portly golf buddy, the one who had lectured me on the natural order. He was standing near the coat check, his face ashen. He had been watching the entire legal dissection. He had clearly invested in Evan's community app. He'd probably given Evans seed money tonight, right after his big speech. When his eyes met mine, he didn't look angry. He just looked sick. He turned and fled, the first of the rats to leave the ship. Naomi gathered her files. The demonstration was over. She looked at me, her gaze steady, cutting through my shock. "Tessa," she said, her voice back to a low, private register. "This is the moment. They have committed a clear, prosecutable, multi-pronged felony. You have them. The data is clean. The evidence is pristine. You can choose to file a report and pursue this to the full extent of the law, or you can choose to take this leverage." She patted the stack of signed, defaulted loan agreements. "And simply sever. Use this to enforce a permanent, binding separation. Either way, the boundary must be drawn tonight. You, and you alone, have to decide what that line is." I looked at the table, at the aluminum cases, at the neatly stacked files, each one a paper cut, a small bleed, a moment of weakness and extortion from the last decade of my life. My father, the great Gregory Lockwood, was staring at the tabletop, his face slack, his wounded mask and his rage mask both gone, leaving only the empty, terrified man beneath. My mother was rocking, silently, her eyes squeezed shut, whispering, "No, no, no." My brother was weeping, snot-nosed, into his velvet-sleeved hands. They were not monsters. They were just empty, a vortex of need, disguised as a family. Naomi was right. This was the moment. I placed my hand, my palm flat, on the cover of the $4.2 million ledger. The paper was cool and smooth under my skin. It felt like the closing of a door. It felt like the casing of a bomb. It felt like the first page of a new book. I took a deep breath. "I know what to do," I said. I nodded, not at Naomi, at myself. I did not look at Naomi. I did not look at my broken family. I looked out, across the ballroom, at the 200 guests who were still watching me, their faces a mix of horror, pity, and naked, ravenous curiosity. They were the audience. They had come for a party, and they had been served a public execution. My father had built his entire life on their perception, on his good name. He had used their applause for Evan's speech as leverage. He had used their presence to try and pressure me into silence. He had staged this entire production. It was only fitting that I give it the ending it deserved. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping loudly on the polished floor. I stood up from the table of evidence. I walked, my heels clicking a steady, funereal rhythm, past the abandoned raw bar, past the silent, floral-draped tables, and I stepped up onto the low, carpeted stage where the band had been. The band leader had left his microphone in its stand. I picked it up. It was heavy and cold. I clicked the small switch on its side. A sharp pop of feedback, followed by a low, electric hiss, echoed through the ballroom. The amplifier was still on. Every single guest, every waiter, every member of the security team froze. I looked at the chandeliers. The light was so bright, so warm, so relentlessly revealing. "Good evening," I said. My voice was amplified, rolling over the stunned crowd, calm and clear as a bell. "I know this is not the birthday toast you were expecting." A few nervous, choked laughs came from the back. I asked for the music to be stopped, just for a moment. I looked at my family, a tableau of white-faced terror, pinned to their chairs at the center table. Tonight, as we were celebrating, someone in this room used the hotel's guest network and a host-level device to make 3 separate, unauthorized attempts to access my private financial accounts. The final attempt was an illegal wire transfer for $1.9 million. The silence in that room was a living thing. It was absolute. You could hear the faint hiss of the amplifier, the buzz of the chandelier filaments. You could hear the ice melting in 200 forgotten cocktails. My father's entire world, the one built on reputation and applause, had just been vaporized. Evan was the first to find his voice. He shot to his feet, knocking his chair over backward. It clattered to the floor with a hollow thud. "You're lying!" he shrieked, his voice cracking, hysterical. "She's lying! This is slander. You're doing this just because we asked for a loan. You're trying to ruin us. You're slandering your own family. Tessa, how dare you?" His appeal was desperate. He was still trying to play the old game. "This is a family matter. She is the crazy one." "Mr. Lockwood," Naomi's voice cut through his hysteria, sharp and cold from her seat at the table. She had her laptop open. "Slander requires the statement to be false." She stood, not needing a microphone. Her courtroom voice was more than enough. "Let's review the facts, shall we?" At 8:05 p.m., an initial probe was attempted against Ms. Lockwood's account using her social security number, which was repelled. At 8:22 p.m., a second, more sophisticated attempt was made, using a new login created from the hotel's public network, which was also repelled. And at 8:41 p.m., she looked up, her gaze pinning Evan where he stood. A final privileged attempt was made using the GL Host iPad, initiating a $1.9 million wire transfer to a Delaware shell corporation, Lockwood Legacy Holdings, which she pointed at Evan, registered 48 hours ago. "It's a misunderstanding," my father roared, surging to his feet. He was back to being the patriarch, the general. He had his lie. "It was a guest, a stranger. This hotel's security," he jabbed a finger at Mr. Shaw, who was watching, impassive, "is a disgrace. Someone clearly stole that device. We are the victims here. My son is the victim. Tessa is the victim. We are all victims of this hotel's incompetence." Mr. Shaw took 2 measured steps forward. He was no longer addressing Naomi. He was addressing the room. "Mr. Lockwood," he said, his voice a flat, official monotone. "My team has already confirmed the GL Host iPad was not stolen. It was issued by our AV team at 7:30 p.m. at the specific verbal request of Mr. Evan Lockwood, who claimed he needed it to manage the host's slideshow. The device's login credentials and administrative access were created, per his instructions, and tied to his name. The device never left his possession until a waiter held it for him. The unauthorized access attempts were made from that device. There was no stranger. There was no outside breach. This was it, the public, factual, unassailable confirmation. Gregory Lockwood's narrative was dead, and then, from the crowd, came the final, accidental nail. a woman near the front, one of my father's golf buddies' wives, a woman who filmed everything on her phone, gasped. She was staring at her screen. "Oh my goodness," she whispered, loud enough for the people near her to hear. "Harold, look." She turned to her husband, the man Miles who had fled earlier, but he was gone. So she just held up her phone. I was filming Evan's speech. It was so inspiring." Her finger was on the screen, scrolling. "Wait, look, right after the speech, I kept filming." A security officer, the woman in the suit, moved toward her. "Ma'am?" "Look," the woman insisted, holding up the phone. The video was clear. It showed Evan, flushed with applause, stepping off the stage. It showed him walking directly to the AV station. It showed him talking to the young technician. It showed him pointing. It showed the tech handing him the silver iPad. And then, clear as day, it showed Evan instructing the tech, pointing to the laptop screen, the captive portal screen. As the tech nodded and typed, the video was a perfect, time-stamped visual record of the exact moment the conspiracy was enacted. Evan saw it. He saw the woman holding the phone. He saw the security officer looking at it. He saw Naomi's thin, satisfied smile. The data had him. The witnesses had him. And now the video had him. The tower of lies he had lived in his entire life collapsed, all at once. He broke. It was not a cry. It was a howl, a deep, animal sound of pure, abject terror. "No!" he screamed, his hands flying to his head. "No, I didn't mean it. I was just trying to hold the spot. The deal. It was a real deal. I was going to pay it back. I swear. I was going to pay it all back as soon as it closed on Monday. I was just holding the spot." He had confessed, in front of 200 people. He had admitted to the act, the intent, and the motive. I stood on the stage, the microphone heavy in my hand. My father's face was a mask of purple, contorted rage, but his rage was not for me. He turned on his son. "You!" he bellowed, his voice a primal roar. "You stupid, stupid boy! I told you to wait. I told you to let me handle her. Why were you so stupid?" He didn't deny the crime. He didn't deny the plan. He had just confessed, involuntarily, to being the mastermind. He was furious at his son, not for committing a felony, but for getting caught. The room was a vortex of chaos. The guests were surging backward, away from the yelling, away from the raw, ugly truth. And my mother, Diane, finally, truly understood. This was not a situation. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a crime. And her son was going to prison. She scrambled from her chair. She ran, not to her son, not to her husband, but to me. She stumbled up the low step of the stage, her hands clawing at my dress. Tessa, please!" She was sobbing. Real, desperate, ugly tears now. "Please, stop this. You can't. He's your brother. You can't call the police. Don't call the police. It was a mistake. You have the money back. It's fine. Please, baby, don't do this. Don't send him to jail. It will kill your father. It will kill me. Please." She was on her knees, clinging to me, begging me to protect her son from the consequences of his own actions, begging me, the victim, to save the criminal. I looked down at her. I had no words left. "We are not calling the police, Mrs. Lockwood," Naomi said. She had walked to the foot of the stage, her voice a bucket of ice water on the hysteria. My mother looked up, hope flashing in her ruined face. "You're not?" "No," Naomi said. "We don't have to." Her eyes went to Mr. Shaw, who was standing by the center table, his hand to his earpiece, listening. "The bank," Naomi continued, "has a legal fiduciary duty to report attempted wire fraud of this magnitude. Avery Holt Private Wealth's internal security team has already filed a mandatory report with their federal regulators and the FBI's cybercrime division. The protocol was triggered the moment Mr. Holt confirmed the attempt. The decision was never in our hands. The bank already made the call." as if her words were a script. Mr. Shaw lowered his hand from his earpiece. His face was grim. That was a representative from the bank's Global Security Operations Center. He announced to the room, "They are formally requesting, in coordination with law enforcement, that we identify and isolate the primary suspect in the breach, Mr. Evan Lockwood." He looked at Evan, who was standing, paralyzed, by his overturned chair. "Sir," Mr. Shaw said, his voice leaving no room for argument, "please put your hands on the table and do not move. My colleagues will be with you in a moment." Evan looked around, his eyes wild with pure, animal panic. He looked at the main doors. Mr. Shaw's two colleagues, the other man and the woman in the dark suits, were standing there, blocking the exit. He looked at the service corridor, the one I had taken my photograph from. The young, muscular waiter who had found the iPad was standing there, arms crossed, looking very happy to be of assistance. He looked at my mother, who was still on her knees, whimpering. He looked at my father, who was just staring at his son with a look of utter dead-eyed contempt. He was completely and totally trapped. I lowered the microphone. I looked up at the great, glittering chandeliers. They poured their brilliant, beautiful light down on all of us. It was a warm, expensive, golden light, but it no longer felt like a party. It felt like the harsh, unblinking glare of an interrogation lamp. We were all trapped under it, and the truth, finally, had nowhere left to hide. I looked down at my mother, kneeling at my feet, her hands clutching my dress, her face a grotesque mask of terror and supplication. This was the final weapon, the one they had always used when the logic failed, when the threats fell flat, the appeal to a shared history that I was, apparently, the only one expected to honor. In that moment, standing on the stage under the unforgiving light, my childhood spooled out behind my eyes. Not a film of abuse or poverty. It was worse. It was a subtle, pervasive, and constant imbalance. It was the memory of my 10th birthday, when I had asked for a proper telescope and had received a set of encyclopedias. "For your future," my father had said. 2 months later, for Evan's 12th, he had misbehaved and broken his bicycle and was rewarded with a brand new, top-of-the-line mountain bike to build his character. My role was to be the responsible one. His was to be the project. My achievements were expected, and thus unrewarded. His failures were crises, and thus endlessly funded, forgiven, and subsidized. I was not the golden child. I was the cash cow. The term, my uncle's term, echoed in my head, a bitter, perfect truth. For years, I had been the family firefighter. I was the one who got the quiet, panicked call at 2 a.m. from my mother. "Evan has a problem with some gentleman in Atlantic City." I was the one who had to liquidate stock to cover the investment my father made that had, shockingly, turned out to be a pyramid scheme. I was the one who paid, and paid, and paid. And what was my reward? Silence. Not even a thank you. Just a heavy, suffocating silence. The click of the phone, the resumption of normal family dinners, as if nothing had happened. The expectation that I would, of course, continue to be the firewall, that I would absorb the damage, that I would quietly rebuild the systems they had so carelessly burned down. I looked at my mother. Her sobs now just a desperate, rhythmic sound. I understood. This was not a wound. A wound can be stitched. A wound can heal. This was an infection, a deep, systemic rot that had been festering for 30 years. And if I gave in now, if I applied a bandage of pity and obligation, if I let her "please don't call the police" change a single fact of what had happened tonight, the gangrene would win. It would take my arm, and then it would take everything else. The cycle had to stop, not be paused. It had to be terminated. The infection had to be cut out. I reached down, and I unpried my mother's fingers from my dress, one by one. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. I stepped down off the stage. I walked past her, as if she were a stranger. I walked back to the central table, the one now covered in the pristine, aluminum-cased evidence of their long, parasitic war against me. My father was still standing, his rage now frozen into a mask of pure reptilian hate. I looked him directly in the eye. "My money," I said, my voice quiet but carrying in the dead air, "is not the family fund. It is not your retirement plan. It is not Evan's seed capital. It is not Mom's credit line. It is mine." My mother, who had struggled to her feet, let out a wail and collapsed into one of the empty banquet chairs. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking, her final gambit defeated. "Tessa," she whispered, her voice muffled, the last drops of guilt from a well that had finally run dry. "After everything we did for you, after all the opportunities we gave you, your brother." "I choose the truth," I said, repeating my earlier words, but this time, they were not a defense, they were a verdict. Naomi, who had been watching me, her expression unreadable, nodded once. She had been waiting for this, for the final, internal signature. She slid a new document from her case. It was 2 pages. She placed it in front of me, next to the ledger of my family's debt. "Tessa," she said, her voice formal, "this is a petition for a temporary restraining order and a formal notice of forbidden access. It legally bars Gregory, Diane, and Evan Lockwood from contacting you, your employees, or any of your representatives. It bars them from your properties, from your offices at Vanguard Sparrow Labs, and from all digital or physical access to any of your financial accounts. Pending the outcome of the investigation, it needs your signature to be filed with the court. The electronic portal is open." She placed a heavy black fountain pen on top of the paper. I picked it up. The pen was heavy, cool, and perfectly balanced. My hand was steady. I thought of the year before, sitting in my office at 3 a.m, signing the final system architecture design for the Sparrow 9 project, the security protocol that was now protecting the largest power grid in the country. My hand had been this steady then. That signature had been an act of creation, of building a fortress. This one was the same. It was an act of preservation, of defining the wall, of locking the gate. I wrote my name, Tessa Lockwood, on the signature line. The ink was dark and permanent. My father watched the pen move. He watched me set it down. The last vestige of his control, his rage, his performance, shattered. It was replaced by a look of such profound, astonished disbelief that it was almost comical. He looked at me as if I were a chair that had suddenly stood up and slapped him. "How dare you?" he whispered. The words were breathless, choked. It was not an accusation, it was a genuine question, a tear in his entire understanding of the universe. "How dare you?" He truly did not understand. He had believed, his entire life, that he was entitled to me, to my money, my success, my silence. My signature was an act of blasphemy. I looked up from the paper. "I dare," I said, "because it is my right. You dared because you thought it was yours. You were wrong." From across the room, by the wall, Evan, flanked by the 2 silent security guards, let out a choked, desperate whimper. "But, Tess," he babbled, the words thick with tears, we're family. We're family." It was the last magic spell, the final incantation, and it dissolved in the air, powerless. The words meant nothing. They were just sounds. "My associate is filing this electronically as we speak," Naomi said, taking the signed document and sliding it into a waiting courier envelope. "I have already transmitted the formal evidence preservation notices to the hotel's corporate counsel and to the bank's general counsel. Every server log, every video file, every keycard swipe is now legally protected." My phone vibrated in my hand. A secure message from Avery. "The accounts are ironclad. Full security lockdown is holding. I recommend we create a new, encrypted case file vault, separate from your main trust, to hold all legal documentation, evidence, and communications related to this incident." I typed back, my thumb moving fast. "Do it," and add a subfile. "I need a personal communications plan, internal to my company and external. The official statement is No comment. This is to be handled as a security incident. I hit send. I was already moving on. As I looked up, the great double doors of the ballroom, the ones that had been guarded by Mr. Shaw's team, swung open again, the guests still lingering in the hall scattered. 2 new people walked in, a man and a woman. They were not hotel security. They were not lawyers. Their suits were cheaper, rumpled, functional. They looked tired. They scanned the room, their eyes assessing, cataloging. They saw Mr. Shaw. They saw my family at the table, and they saw Evan standing against the wall. The woman walked over to Mr. Shaw and flashed a badge. "We're from the bank's Civil Investigations and Fraud Unit," she said, her voice flat. "All business. We're here to speak with a Mr. Evan Lockwood regarding a flagged wire transfer." The arrival of the bank's investigators was the final punctuation mark. The drama was over. The procedure had begun. The 2 investigators, the woman with the badge and the rumpled man, did not raise their voices. They were not here to accuse. They were here to collect. They conferred briefly with Mr. Shaw, who pointed first to the bagged iPad in his colleague's hand, and then to Evan, who was still standing by his overturned chair, a statue of pure, abject terror. The investigators approached him. The woman spoke, her voice devoid of any emotion. "Mr. Evan Lockwood? We are from the bank's Civil Investigations Unit. We need you to come with us to a private office. We have some questions about your account access tonight." It wasn't a request. Evan nodded, a jerky, puppet-like motion. "Before we go," the male investigator said, holding out his hand, "we will need your personal cell phone and your hotel room key." Evan fumbled in his velvet blazer. His fingers were slick with sweat. He pulled out his phone, and then, a last, desperate, stupid act of self-preservation, his thumb began to tap frantically on the screen. Tap, tap, tap. He was trying to delete something, an app, a message history. The male investigator, who had seen this 1,000 times, did not sigh. He simply moved, his hand closing over Evan's, stopping his thumb. "Sir," he said, his voice dropping to a new, harder level, "please place the phone on the table, face down, now. I'm just turning off the ringer," Evan stammered, his eyes wide. "Attempting to alter or destroy potential evidence is a felony. Mr. Lockwood, it will be noted in our report. Hand me the phone." Evan's hand went limp. He released the phone. The investigator took it, along with his room key, and dropped them both into a separate, labeled evidence bag. "Let's go, sir. They didn't cuff him. They didn't touch him. They simply flanked him, one in front, one behind, and escorted him out of the ballroom. He was isolated, just as the bank's protocol demanded. He looked back once, his eyes finding mine. They were not angry. They were just empty. The investigators were efficient. The man returned a moment later, while the woman began the interview with Evan in a secured office. He walked over to the table where Naomi was packing her aluminum cases. He and Naomi exchanged business cards. It was a trade of 2 apex predators. "We have the device and the suspect's phone," the investigator said. "We also have the footage from the guest who filmed Mr. Lockwood at the AV station. We will be taking possession of the hotel's server logs and all relevant camera footage from this hallway for the last 12 hours. Naomi nodded. "You'll have our full cooperation." The investigator then turned to my father. Gregory had sunk back into his chair. The rage was gone. The performance was gone. He was just a gray, spent old man. "Mr. Gregory Lockwood?" My father looked up, his eyes dull. "This," the investigator said, pulling a folded white document from his jacket pocket, "is a formal notice. We require you to appear at our bank's downtown compliance office at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning for an interview regarding your potential role as a co-conspirator in this incident. A full copy has already been emailed to your legal counsel, Mr. Friedman, who I see you've been attempting to call." My father looked at his own phone on the table. The screen showed 12 missed calls to his lawyer. He took the paper. It wasn't a warrant. It wasn't an arrest. It was a summons. a piece of corporate letterhead that was, in his world, a death sentence. His good name, the only currency he had ever possessed, was now officially worthless. He was no longer a patron. He was a co-conspirator. My mother was still in her chair, rocking silently. She watched Evan be led away. She watched my father take the paper. She was invisible to the new authorities in the room. She was not a financial entity. She was just wreckage. She fumbled in her small beaded purse and pulled out her phone. She dialed, her thumb shaking. "Albert," she whispered into the phone. "The household butler. Albert, please, just come and get me. The Garrison Meridian, the front entrance. Please, Albert, now." She hung up. She stood, pulling her thin cashmere wrap around her shoulders, a shroud of social disgrace. For the first time in her life, no one was watching her. No one was taking her picture. She was just another guest leaving a party that had gone on too long. She shuffled toward the main doors, her head down, alone. The spell was broken. The guests, who had been a silent, captive audience, began to move, a sudden, anxious migration to the coat check. But a few of them, 4 or 5, did something strange. They were my father's friends, the golf buddies, the investors. They walked past our table, not making eye contact, and one by one, they quietly placed an envelope on Naomi's table. Naomi, packing her case, looked at the first one. "I'm sorry?" A woman in a tight sequin dress flushed. "It's the gift. For Gregory. For the party." She gestured vaguely. "But it's clear. Well, you paid, dear, didn't you?" she said to me, her voice a pitying whisper. "And my husband. He gave Evan a check tonight. For that app." She shook her head. "It just doesn't feel right. Please, just take it." They were returning the gifts. The cash-filled envelopes I had essentially funded myself, given to my father to establish his generosity, were now being returned to my lawyer as if to a lost and found. The entire social economy of my family was a fraud, and the creditors were finally here. Mr. Henderson, the event manager, was now in full operational mode, his face a grim mask. The party was over. He was speaking into his radio. "Clear the ballroom. Strike the seafood tower. Get the photo booth backdrop down. Now. And that banner." He pointed to the Celebrating Gregory banner. "Get it down. I want it gone." The staff, who had been hiding in the kitchens, swarmed in. The beautiful magical room was being disassembled. The music was gone. The warm golden lights were snapped off, replaced by the harsh, white overhead service lights. My birthday party was over. Naomi snapped her second aluminum case shut. The thud was a sound of finality. "Tessa, we're leaving, not through the lobby." She guided me by the elbow, away from my father, who was still staring at his summons, away from the shamefaced guests. We walked back through the service corridor, the one I had used to take the photograph. It felt like a lifetime ago. We went down a set of cold, concrete service stairs, the click of our heels echoing. We emerged into the damp, underground parking garage. A black sedan was idling by the elevator, Naomi's pale associate holding the rear door open. Before I got in, Naomi put her hand on my arm, her grip firm. "Listen to me, Tessa, this is the most important part. From this moment, you are in a digital quarantine. Your mother will call you, weeping. Your father will call, threatening. Evan will find a way to get a message to you, begging for forgiveness and for you to call off the dogs. You cannot answer." "I understand," I said. "Digital separation. Total," she emphasized. "Block their numbers. I will have my team set up filters on your email to catch any messages from them or their known associates. All communication must go through my office. If you respond, if you send so much as a one-word text message, you risk compromising the restraining order. You will give them an opening. You are the primary witness in a federal banking investigation. Tessa, you are not their daughter right now. Do you understand me? I understand. My voice was a low, steady hum. Good. She nodded, satisfied. Get in. A car will follow you to your condo. I slid into the dark, leather-scented quiet of the back seat, the heavy door closed, shutting out the damp garage air. It was profoundly silent. My phone vibrated, not my work phone, my secure, personal one. It was a video call from Avery Holt. I answered. His face, illuminated by his monitor, was grainy in the dark car. He looked exhausted, but a small muscle in his jaw was relaxed for the first time. Tessa, you're clear. The car has you. I'm clear, Avery. I'm activating the Pathfinder protocol, he said. Full spectrum, heightened surveillance across your entire portfolio, personal and corporate. We're changing all your physical hard tokens and security keys. A new set will be couriered to your condo, due to arrive in 6 hours. We are officially designating your family members as a persistent hostile entity. The system will treat any attempt at contact from them as a high-level security breach. A hostile entity, I repeated. The term was so cold, so corporate. It was perfect. You did the right thing, Tessa, he said. You saw the pattern of escalating abuse. Tonight wasn't a single event. It was a predictable outcome. You just broke the chain. Thank you, Avery, he nodded. Get some rest. Your assets are secure. The call ended. The car was moving now. Climbing the ramp toward the street, I looked out the window. It had started to rain. A cold, fine, miserable Chicago drizzle, the kind that soaks you through. The car exited the garage, pulling onto the street, and stopped at a red light. We were right by the main, ornate entrance of the Garrison Meridian, and under the massive green awning, just at the edge of the light, I saw him, my father. He was standing on the curb, alone. His rented tuxedo was unbuttoned. The mist was settling on his shoulders, darkening the fine wool. He wasn't trying to hail a cab. He wasn't calling his wife. He was just standing there, motionless, staring at the wet pavement. He was holding that single, folded white piece of paper, the summons. His golf buddies were gone. His adoring audience was gone. His wife was gone. His son was in a room with an investigator. The great Gregory Lockwood, the host, the patriarch, the man with the good name, was just a small, wan old man, standing in the drizzle. For the first time in his life, there was no one standing next to him to hold his umbrella. The light turned green. The car began to move, the wipers thumping, clearing the rain from the glass. He didn't look up. I did not look back. In the quiet, anonymous darkness of the back seat, as the city lights slid past, I took out my personal phone. I opened a new, blank note. The cursor blinked. I typed a title. New rules. I went to the first line. I typed, 1. No further explanations, justifications, or apologies for decisions related to asset protection. My thumb hovered over the Save button in the corner of the screen. It was such a small, simple, digital action. A single tap on a piece of glass. I pressed it. The note saved. A large, heavy, soundproof door. One I didn't even know existed. Slammed shut deep inside me. The adrenaline, the rage, the fear. It all finally began to drain away. It was replaced by a vast, cold, and unfamiliar calm. It was the sound of a system, finally, being secure. The next morning, the city was cold and gray, but the law moved with a blinding digital speed. By 9 a.m., just as my father was walking into the bank's compliance office, a judge had already reviewed our petition. The emergency protection order was granted. The temporary asset freeze was in place. It was a digital iron curtain, descended and locked. The bank's internal investigation, which in my father's day would have taken 6 months of shuffling paper, was completed by noon. The conclusion, which Naomi forwarded to me, was a single clinical paragraph. It stated that the $1.9 million wire attempt was a coordinated, multi-vector intrusion, using both social engineering and compromised network credentials. It formally concluded that the attempt was initiated by Evan Lockwood, using a device that was knowingly and actively facilitated by the registered event host, Gregory Lockwood, who had used his host status to procure privileged administrative access and provide it to his son. My father was no longer just a co-conspirator, he was a facilitator. The bank was already preparing its own civil case against both of them. Naomi did not wait. That afternoon, she filed the civil demand. It was not a request for negotiation. It was a notice of seizure. It demanded the full, immediate repayment of the $4,217,654 plus 10 years of accrued penalty interest. A copy was sent to my father, my brother, and my mother. It came with a preliminary list of assets Naomi was prepared to attach. My father's house, the one I had paid the mortgage on for 3 years, Evan's leased Audi, and the contents of my father's investment club account. The first crack in my father's facade appeared 48 hours later, an email, not from one of his lawyers, but from Miles, the portly golf buddy who had lectured me on the natural order. He had clearly been served some kind of notice as a potential witness. His email to Naomi was panicked, obsequious, and utterly self-serving. He wanted to cooperate fully. He attached a scan of a canceled check for $50,000, made out to Evan Lockwood's community project. He admitted, in writing, that Evan had solicited the investment at my birthday party, promising a 100% return in 90 days, and had mentioned that my sister Tessa is our silent partner. The email proved the money flow. It proved premeditation. It proved my name was the currency they were both spending. Naomi added it to the pile. My mother was the only one who was not charged. There was no evidence she had participated in the fraud. Her crime was one of long, willful, and catastrophic ignorance, but the law, in its own way, had a judgment for her, too. As part of the civil asset proceedings, Naomi filed for a formal financial separation on my behalf, to protect my assets from any of my father's new, forthcoming debts. The court order, which my mother did not contest, legally severed her from my father's finances, and with it went her access, every supplementary card, every shared account, every line of credit I had provided, was canceled. Her name was removed. The financial cord was cut. Evan, faced with the bank's civil suit, the video evidence, and the federal wire fraud charges, collapsed. He took the first deal offered. He pleaded guilty to the civil charges. To avoid immediate criminal prosecution, he agreed to a full settlement, to pay the first installment. He was forced to sell the Audi R8, the Patek Philippe watch, and every other luxury item he had acquired. It was a fire sale. It paid for less than 10% of the debt, but it was a start. He was left with nothing but a criminal record and a court-ordered repayment plan that would shadow him for the rest of his life. My father, Gregory, refused to settle. He was the patriarch. He would fight. He held out for 3 weeks, until Naomi filed a motion to force the sale of his house. He signed the papers the next day. It was not a settlement. It was a confession of judgment, a full-throated admission of the $4.2 million debt, plus all interest and legal fees. He signed a multi-decade repayment agreement, a financial harness that would siphon every spare dollar he had for the remainder of his life. The agreement was ironclad, with a key violation clause. If he missed a single payment, by a single day, Naomi was authorized to file for immediate, enforced asset seizure. He had not just been defeated, he had been garrisoned. The first check from the court-ordered seizures arrived in Naomi's trust account 1 month later. It was a significant sum. I looked at the number. It was just money. It was stained. "Naomi," I said over the phone, "I want to start a foundation." "A foundation?" "I want to use this money, all of it, every dollar that you recover. I want to create a legal defense and advocacy fund for women, specifically for women who are trapped in situations of familial financial abuse, the ones who are told, it's family money, the ones whose loans are never repaid, the ones who are told, don't make a scene." Naomi was silent for a full 10 seconds. Tessa, she said, her voice different, softer. That is an excellent instruction. I will start the charter paperwork today. At work, the incident became a case study. Avery Holt and I sat down with my top engineers. We deconstructed the entire night, the social engineering, the credential theft, the sloppy but dangerous network intrusion. They used his trust as a host to gain privileged access, I explained, drawing on a whiteboard. They used the party, the noise of the event, as a cover for the digital attack. It's a blended threat. From that meeting, we developed a new protocol for our corporate clients. We called it the Garrison Meridian Model, a 3-layer defense system that integrated physical security, social event monitoring, and real-time network analysis. It became our best-selling enterprise security package of the next fiscal year. We had turned the breach into a fortress. A year passed. The calls from my family, the weeping, the begging, the threats had come. Just as Naomi predicted, and as instructed, I never answered. They went into a digital vault, unheard. My 34th birthday arrived on a cold, snowy Tuesday. I did not go to the Garrison Meridian. I went to my office. At 6 p.m., I logged off. I went home to my condo. My 3 closest friends were there. The ones who had known me since college. The ones who had never asked for $1. We ordered 3 large pizzas. We opened a bottle of good, not great, champagne. We sat on the floor, in our sweaters, and argued about a stupid movie. There were no speeches. There was no raw bar. There was no future patron. It was perfect. At 10 p.m., my friends left. I was cleaning up a paper plate when my personal phone, the secure one, buzzed. It was a text message. From a new, unknown number. My hands were perfectly steady. I opened it. 6 words. Your father is very sick. Come home. My mother? She had found a new phone, a new angle of attack. The golden opportunity had failed. The weeping victim had failed. Now, it was the final, most powerful weapon. The appeal to death, the guilt of the absent daughter. I read the words. I felt a small, cold echo, a ping, not of grief, or panic, or guilt, just an old, familiar system alert. Unusual request. Verify. I set the phone down on the kitchen counter. I did not reply. I did not block the number. I simply let it sit there. A piece of data. I picked up my other phone, the one with Naomi's number on speed dial. I called her. Naomi, it's Tessa. I just received a communication, an attempt to bypass the protection order. From who? My mother. She claims my father is ill. Understood. Naomi's voice was all business. I will handle it. As you know, we established the medical trust and assigned a third-party executor during the proceedings. Precisely for this scenario, I will contact the executor, get a formal, physician-vetted report on Gregory's condition, and forward it to you. You will know the truth, the facts, within the hour. You will not have to speak to her. You will not be emotionally compromised. The system is working. Thank you, Naomi. I hung up. I walked over to the great window of my condo. The snow was falling heavily now, thick, white, and silent, covering the city. I looked down at the lights, at the hushed streets. I thought about the chandeliers in that ballroom, that brilliant, beautiful, expensive light. It had been so warm, so golden. But it was a lie. It was a stage light. It was designed to flatter, to conceal, to create an illusion. Tonight, the light from the snow was cold and clear and starkly, perfectly white. It was an honest light. It didn't hide anything. A small, very slight smile touched my lips. It was the first time in my life I had ever truly felt secure, a peace that didn't need a witness, a victory that required no applause. They wanted a few dollars. I chose the law. And in that bright, terrible room, justice finally stood tall, a pillar in the middle of the dance floor. Thank you so much for listening to my story here on Lila Revenge Stories. I see all of you in the comments, and I read every single one. Let me know where in the world you're listening from. I'd love to know what you thought about this one. Please, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and if you really want to support the stories we tell, hit that hype button so more people can find us and hear this.